Judge Marcus Williams adjusted his tie one last time before stepping out of his black Mercedes. The morning sun cast long shadows across the courthouse parking lot as he gathered his briefcase and legal documents. At 52 years old, Marcus had spent the last 15 years serving as a respected judge in the city's criminal court. His reputation for fairness and wisdom had earned him recognition throughout the legal community. The day ahead promised to be challenging. Marcus was scheduled to preside over a high-profile case involving police misconduct allegations. The case had drawn significant media attention and community interest. As an African-American judge, Marcus understood the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. He had worked tirelessly to reach this position, overcoming countless obstacles and prejudices along the way. Marcus had grown up in the same city where he now served as a judge. His childhood neighborhood had been rough, filled with poverty and limited opportunities. His mother, a school teacher, and his father, a construction worker, had instilled in him the values of hard work, education, and perseverance. They had sacrificed greatly to ensure Marcus could attend college and law school. After graduating from law school with honors, Marcus had started as a public defender. He had witnessed firsthand the injustices within the legal system, particularly how people of color were often treated unfairly. This experience had motivated him to work even harder, eventually becoming a prosecutor before being appointed to the bench. As Marcus walked toward the courthouse entrance, his phone buzzed with a text message from his wife, Sarah. She reminded him about their daughter's soccer game that evening and wished him luck with the difficult case ahead. Marcus smiled, thinking about his family. Sarah was also a lawyer, working at a prestigious firm downtown. Their daughter Ashley was 16 and excelling in both academics and athletics. The courthouse steps were already crowded with reporters, protesters, and curious onlookers. News vans lined the street, their satellite dishes reaching toward the sky. Marcus could hear the murmur of conversations and see camera crews setting up their equipment. The case had divided the community, with some supporting the police officers involved and others demanding accountability. Marcus nodded politely to the reporters who called out his name, but he did not stop to answer questions. He had learned, long ago, to maintain professional distance from media coverage. His job was to ensure a fair trial, not to provide commentary for news outlets. Inside the courthouse, Marcus greeted the security guards and court staff. Many of them had worked alongside him for years, and they respected his dedication to justice. The building itself was impressive, with marble columns and high ceilings that conveyed the gravity and importance of the legal proceedings that took place within its walls. In his chambers, Marcus reviewed the case files one final time. The allegations were serious, involving claims that police officers had used excessive force during an arrest. The incident had been partially captured on cell phone video, but the footage was unclear in crucial moments. Both sides had assembled strong legal teams, and Marcus knew the trial would be contentious. His assistant, Patricia, knocked on the door and entered with his morning coffee. She had been working with Marcus for over 8 years and knew his routines and preferences perfectly. Patricia was in her early 60s with gray hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She had seen many judges come and go during her long career at the courthouse. "The courtroom is filling up quickly," Patricia informed him. "Security has been increased due to the expected crowds and media attention." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. He understood the community's interest in the case, but he was concerned about maintaining order in his courtroom. The emotional nature of the allegations meant that tensions could run high among spectators. "Have both legal teams arrived?" Marcus asked, sipping his coffee. "Yes, they're both here early, making final preparations. The defense attorney seems confident, while the prosecution appears more cautious," Patricia replied. Marcus had worked with attorneys from both sides before. The prosecution was led by District Attorney Jennifer Martinez, a competent lawyer with a strong track record. The defense team was headed by Robert Thompson, a veteran criminal defense attorney known for his aggressive tactics and theatrical courtroom style. As the morning progressed, Marcus could hear the growing crowd outside the courthouse. Protesters chanted slogans, some supporting the police and others demanding justice for the alleged victim. The situation required careful handling to ensure that external pressures did not influence the legal proceedings. Marcus reflected on similar cases he had presided over during his career. Each one had taught him valuable lessons about the complexities of the justice system and the importance of remaining impartial despite personal feelings or community pressures. He had seen how bias and prejudice could corrupt legal proceedings, and he was determined to prevent that from happening in his courtroom. The judge's role extended beyond simply applying the law. Marcus understood that his decisions could impact not only the individuals directly involved in the case, but also the broader community's faith in the justice system. This responsibility weighed heavily on him, particularly given the current climate of tension between law enforcement and minority communities. Looking at his watch, Marcus realized it was time to prepare for court. He put on his black judicial robe, a symbol of the authority and responsibility vested in him by the legal system. The robe reminded him of the oath he had taken when first appointed to the bench, promising to uphold justice and equality under the law. Before leaving his chambers, Marcus took a moment to center himself mentally and emotionally. The case ahead would test his skills as a judge and his commitment to fairness. He knew that regardless of the outcome, his handling of the trial would be scrutinized by the media, the community, and his colleagues in the legal profession. Patricia wished him luck as he prepared to enter the courtroom. The bailiff was already calling for order as spectators, attorneys, and jury members took their places. Marcus could feel the weight of expectation as he prepared to make his entrance. The case that lay ahead would challenge everything he had learned about law, justice, and human nature during his distinguished career on the bench. The trial had concluded earlier than expected. After 3 intense days of testimony, witness statements, and legal arguments, the jury had reached their verdict. Marcus had dismissed the court for the day, feeling mentally and emotionally drained from the complex case. The jury had found the police officers not guilty of excessive force, a decision that would undoubtedly spark controversy in the community. As Marcus drove home through the city streets, he noticed increased police presence throughout the area. News of the verdict had spread quickly, and authorities were preparing for potential protests or civil unrest. Marcus understood the community's frustration, even though he believed the jury had followed the evidence presented during the trial. The sun was setting as Marcus navigated through downtown traffic. His Mercedes moved smoothly through the busy streets, past office buildings and shops that were beginning to close for the evening. He was looking forward to spending a quiet evening with his family, away from the pressures and complexities of the courtroom. Marcus's route home took him through several different neighborhoods, each with its own character and demographic makeup. He passed through the business district with its gleaming skyscrapers, then through middle-class residential areas with tree-lined streets and well-maintained homes. Finally, he would reach his own upscale neighborhood, where he and Sarah had lived for the past 12 years. As he stopped at a red light, Marcus's phone rang. The caller ID showed it was his colleague, Judge Patricia Coleman, who had been following the case closely. Marcus decided to let the call go to voicemail, not wanting to discuss the trial while driving. He knew Patricia would want to talk about the verdict and its potential implications for the community. The light turned green and Marcus continued his journey home. He was traveling through a mixed neighborhood when he noticed flashing red and blue lights in his rearview mirror. A police car was signaling for him to pull over. Marcus felt a familiar knot form in his stomach, despite having done nothing wrong. Even as a respected judge, he could not escape the anxiety that many African-American men felt during police encounters. Marcus carefully pulled his Mercedes to the curb, ensuring he followed proper protocol. He turned off the engine, kept his hands visible on the steering wheel, and waited for the officer to approach his vehicle. Despite his position and status in the community, Marcus knew that initial appearances could be deceiving, and he wanted to avoid any misunderstandings. The officer who approached Marcus's car was a young white man in his late 20s. His nameplate read Officer Derek Mitchell. He walked with an aggressive swagger and wore dark sunglasses despite the approaching darkness. Officer Mitchell's body language immediately suggested hostility and suspicion as he approached the driver's side window. "License and registration," Officer Mitchell demanded without any greeting or explanation for the traffic stop. Marcus remained calm and polite. "Good evening, officer. May I ask why I was pulled over?" he inquired while slowly reaching for his wallet. "Don't ask me questions. Just give me your license and registration," Mitchell snapped back, his hand moving closer to his service weapon. Marcus complied with the request, handing over his driver's license and vehicle registration. He noticed that Officer Mitchell barely glanced at the documents before asking additional questions. "What are you doing in this neighborhood?" Mitchell asked suspiciously. "This is an expensive car for someone like you to be driving." Marcus felt his jaw tighten at the officer's implication, but he maintained his composure. "I'm heading home from work, officer. I live in Oakwood Heights." Officer Mitchell laughed sarcastically. "Sure you do. Step out of the vehicle. I need to search you and the car." "Officer, I don't believe you have probable cause to search my vehicle or my person," Marcus replied calmly, drawing on his legal knowledge and experience. "Are you trying to tell me how to do my job?" Mitchell's voice became more aggressive. "Get out of the car now or I'll drag you out." Marcus realized that the situation was escalating dangerously. He had witnessed similar encounters during his time as a prosecutor and judge, and he knew that arguing with an aggressive officer on the street rarely ended well. However, he also knew his constitutional rights and was unwilling to submit to an illegal search. "Officer Mitchell," Marcus said, reading the name from the uniform. "I am Judge Marcus Williams from the criminal court. I was not speeding or violating any traffic laws. I would like to know the reason for this stop." Mitchell's expression became even more hostile. "I don't care if you say you're the president. Nobody talks back to me like that. Now get out of the car before I arrest you for resisting." The officer opened Marcus's car door and grabbed his arm roughly, attempting to pull him from the vehicle. Marcus remained calm but firm, not resisting but also not complying with what he believed to be an illegal order. "I am not resisting, officer, but I am recording this encounter," Marcus said, having activated his phone's recording function. "I am complying with lawful orders, but I do not consent to any search of my person or vehicle." Officer Mitchell became enraged when he noticed Marcus was recording. "Turn that phone off right now. You cannot record me during a traffic stop." Marcus knew this was incorrect. Citizens had the right to record police encounters in public spaces, a fact that had been established through various court decisions. However, he also understood that correcting the officer at this moment could further escalate the dangerous situation. By this time, several passers-by had stopped to observe the encounter. Some were recording with their phones while others called out questions about what was happening. A small crowd was beginning to gather on the sidewalk, drawn by the commotion and flashing police lights. Among the crowd was Mrs. Eleanor Washington, an elderly African-American woman who lived in the neighborhood. She recognized Marcus from newspaper photos and television coverage of high-profile cases. Mrs. Washington had followed Marcus's career with pride, seeing him as a positive role model for young people in the community. "That's Judge Williams," Mrs. Washington called out to the other spectators. "He's the judge from downtown who handled that big trial this week." Officer Mitchell ignored the crowd and continued his aggressive behavior toward Marcus. The situation had attracted more attention than he had anticipated, but he seemed determined to assert his authority, regardless of the circumstances or Marcus's identity. The encounter was being recorded by multiple witnesses, and the footage would soon spread across social media platforms. The irony of the situation was not lost on Marcus. Hours after presiding over a case involving police misconduct, he found himself experiencing questionable police behavior firsthand. The crowd on the sidewalk continued to grow as word spread about the confrontation between Officer Mitchell and Judge Williams. Several people were now recording the encounter with their smartphones, creating multiple angles of documentation. The flashing police lights and raised voices had drawn attention from nearby businesses and residential buildings. "I said, turn off that phone," Officer Mitchell shouted at Marcus, his face reddening with anger. You're under arrest for interfering with a police investigation and resisting arrest. Marcus remained calm despite the escalating situation. His years of courtroom experience had taught him the importance of maintaining composure under pressure. Officer Mitchell, I am not interfering or resisting. I am simply exercising my constitutional rights. I would like to speak with your supervisor. You don't get to make demands, Mitchell yelled back. He reached for his handcuffs while still gripping Marcus's arm. Turn around and put your hands behind your back. The crowd was becoming more vocal in their disapproval of the officer's behavior. Someone called out, "Leave him alone, he didn't do anything wrong." Another voice shouted, "That's Judge Williams. Show some respect." Mrs. Washington stepped forward. From the crowd, her voice clear and strong despite her advanced age. "Officer, that man is Judge Marcus Williams. He serves this community with honor and dignity. What you're doing is wrong, and everyone here can see it." Officer Mitchell turned toward the crowd, his hand moving to his weapon. "Everyone back up. This is none of your business. Disperse immediately or you'll all be arrested for interfering with police business." The threat only seemed to strengthen the crowd's resolve. More people had arrived, drawn by the commotion and the news that a respected judge was being mistreated. Several community leaders and local business owners were now among the spectators, including Reverend James Patterson from the nearby Baptist church, and Maria Santos, who owned a popular restaurant on the corner. Reverend Patterson, a tall man, with graying hair and a commanding presence, stepped forward. "Officer Mitchell, I know Judge Williams personally. He is a pillar of this community and deserves to be treated with respect. What is the reason for this stop?" "I don't have to explain myself to any of you," Mitchell snapped. "This man was driving suspiciously in an expensive car, and I have every right to investigate." Marcus spoke calmly to the crowd while keeping his hands visible. "Please remain peaceful, everyone. I appreciate your support, but I don't want anyone to be hurt or arrested because of this situation." Despite Marcus's request for calm, the tension in the air was palpable. The crowd had grown to nearly 50 people, and their displeasure with Officer Mitchell's behavior was evident. Some were making phone calls, presumably to local news outlets and civil rights organizations. A young woman in the crowd, later identified as Jessica Chen, a journalism student at the local university, was live streaming the encounter on social media. Her broadcast was being shared rapidly across various platforms, with viewers expressing outrage at what they were witnessing. "This is going out live to thousands of people," Jessica announced loudly enough for Officer Mitchell to hear. "Everyone is watching how you treat Judge Williams." Officer Mitchell seemed to realize for the first time that his actions were being broadcast to a large audience. However, instead of de-escalating the situation, he appeared to become more agitated. His pride and authority had been challenged in front of a crowd, and he was unwilling to back down. At that moment, a second police car arrived at the scene. Officer Sarah Rodriguez emerged from the vehicle and quickly assessed the situation. She was a veteran officer with 15 years of experience and a reputation for professionalism. Officer Rodriguez immediately recognized that something was wrong with the encounter. "Mitchell, what's going on here?" Rodriguez asked as she approached. "I pulled over this suspect for suspicious behavior, and now he's resisting arrest," Mitchell replied, still maintaining his grip on Marcus's arm. Officer Rodriguez looked at Marcus, then at the crowd and back at Mitchell. Her expression showed confusion and concern. "What was the suspicious behavior? Did you run his plates?" Marcus seized the opportunity to address the more experienced officer. "Officer Rodriguez, I am Judge Marcus Williams from the criminal court. I was driving home from work when Officer Mitchell pulled me over without stating a reason. I have provided my license and registration, and I have not committed any violations." Rodriguez's eyes widened as she recognized Marcus from news coverage and court proceedings. She had testified in his courtroom on several occasions and had always found him to be fair and professional. "Judge Williams, I apologize for any confusion," Rodriguez said respectfully. "Mitchell, did you run his plates before initiating this stop?" Mitchell's face showed uncertainty for the first time. "I didn't need to. I saw a black man in an expensive car in this neighborhood and it looked suspicious." The crowd erupted in angry voices at Mitchell's blatantly racial comment. "That's racial profiling," someone shouted. "He said it himself," called out another voice. Officer Rodriguez looked embarrassed and angry at her colleague's statement. She understood immediately that Mitchell had made a serious error in judgment and had now admitted to racial profiling in front of dozens of witnesses and recording devices. "Mitchell, release Judge Williams immediately," Rodriguez ordered firmly. This stop was not justified. "I'm not backing down now," Mitchell replied defiantly. "He was acting suspicious and I have the right to investigate." "No, you don't," Rodriguez shot back. "You just admitted to stopping him based solely on his race and the car he was driving. That's textbook racial profiling, and it's illegal." The tension between the two officers was now evident to everyone present. Rodriguez was trying to prevent a bad situation from becoming worse, while Mitchell seemed determined to continue his aggressive approach, despite the obvious problems with his actions. Judge Williams maintained his dignified composure throughout the exchange. He had dealt with difficult personalities in his courtroom for years, and he understood the importance of allowing the situation to resolve without escalating tensions further. The crowd watched anxiously as the two officers continued their discussion. Many were filming continuously, ensuring that every word and action would be documented. The livestream audience had grown to thousands of viewers, with comments and reactions pouring in from people who were shocked by what they were witnessing. Officer Rodriguez stepped closer to Mitchell, speaking in a low but firm tone. "Derek, you need to end this right now. You're digging yourself into a hole that's going to destroy your career." Mitchell's jaw clenched as he looked around at the crowd of witnesses, all recording and watching his every move. The reality of his situation was beginning to sink in, but his pride prevented him from admitting his mistake. "I'm not letting some judge think he's better than me. The law applies to everyone equally." "The law does apply equally," Marcus interjected calmly, "which is exactly why this stop was improper. You have no reasonable suspicion of criminal activity, and you've admitted that you stopped me based on racial assumptions." Rodriguez turned to address the crowd, which had grown even larger. News vans were now arriving at the scene, having been alerted by the viral social media coverage. "Everyone, please give us some space to resolve this situation peacefully," she announced. Mrs. Washington, who had remained at the front of the crowd, spoke up again. "Officer Rodriguez, we know you're a good officer. We've seen you in this neighborhood before, and you've always been respectful. But your partner here is way out of line." Several other community members voiced their agreement. Marcus had built strong relationships throughout the city during his years on the bench, and many people recognized him as someone who had fought for justice and fairness in the legal system. Reverend Patterson approached Officer Rodriguez. "Officer, I've known Judge Williams for over 10 years. He's presided over cases involving my congregation members, and he's always been fair and impartial. This treatment is disgraceful." Rodriguez nodded respectfully to the Reverend. "I understand your concerns, and I agree that this situation has gotten out of hand." She turned back to Mitchell. "Derek, you need to release Judge Williams and return his documents. This stop is over." "I'm the primary officer on this stop," Mitchell insisted stubbornly. "You can't override my authority." "Watch me," Rodriguez replied firmly. She pulled out her radio and called for their sergeant. "Dispatch, this is Officer Rodriguez requesting Sergeant Murphy respond to our location immediately. We have a situation that requires supervision." The crowd heard the radio call and began to murmur among themselves. Many were taking photos and videos of Officer Mitchell, whose face was now flushed with anger and embarrassment. The arrival of news crews added another layer of pressure to the already tense situation. Jessica Chen, the journalism student who had been live streaming, announced, to her audience, "The supervising sergeant is being called to the scene. Officer Mitchell appears to be refusing orders from his more experienced partner to release Judge Williams." A reporter from Channel 7 News approached the edge of the crowd with her cameraman. "This is Lisa Martinez reporting live from what appears to be a confrontation between a police officer and Judge Marcus Williams. We're still gathering information about what led to this incident." Officer Mitchell noticed the news cameras and seemed to realize that his actions were now being broadcast to a television audience as well as social media. His behavior became even more erratic as he struggled with the decision of whether to continue or retreat. All of you need to back up, Mitchell shouted at the reporters. This is an active police investigation and you're interfering. Officer, we're on a public sidewalk, Lisa Martinez replied professionally. We have the right to report on police activities that occur in public spaces. Marcus remained patient throughout the escalating chaos around him. He had seen similar situations during his time as a prosecutor and understood that police officers sometimes made poor decisions under pressure. However, he also knew that Mitchell's behavior was far beyond what could be considered acceptable. Officer Mitchell, Marcus said calmly, I understand this situation has become complicated, but continuing down this path will only make things worse for everyone involved. I suggest you release me and allow your supervisor to handle this matter. Don't tell me what to do, Mitchell snapped. I don't care if you're a judge or the mayor or anyone else, you don't get special treatment from me. The irony of Mitchell's statement was not lost on the crowd. He was claiming to treat everyone equally while clearly treating Marcus worse than he would treat a white driver in the same situation. Sergeant Robert Murphy arrived on the scene in an unmarked police car. Murphy was a 20-year veteran of the force with a reputation for fairness and professionalism. He immediately recognized that the situation had spiraled out of control and needed immediate de-escalation. Murphy approached the scene and quickly surveyed the crowd, the news cameras, and the two officers. He had worked with both Rodriguez and Mitchell before and knew their personalities and tendencies. What's the situation here? Murphy asked Rodriguez, ignoring Mitchell for the moment. Sergeant Officer Mitchell initiated a traffic stop on Judge Williams without reasonable suspicion. He's admitted that he stopped the judge based on his race and the vehicle he was driving. Judge Williams has been cooperative throughout, but Mitchell is refusing to end the stop despite the obvious problems. Murphy looked at Marcus, whom he recognized from previous interactions at the courthouse. Judge Williams, are you injured or in need of medical attention? No, Sergeant Murphy. I'm fine physically. I just want this situation to be resolved peacefully so everyone can go home safely, Marcus replied. Murphy nodded and turned to Mitchell. Derek, release Judge Williams immediately and return his documents. This stop is terminated. Mitchell's face showed a mixture of anger, embarrassment, and defiance. Sergeant, I initiated this stop in good faith and I believe I had reasonable suspicion. Based on what Officer Rodriguez told me, your reasonable suspicion was racial profiling, which is illegal and against department policy. End this now, or you'll be facing serious disciplinary action. The crowd watched silently as the confrontation between the officers played out. Many were holding their phones, continuing to record what had become a significant incident that would likely have lasting consequences for everyone involved. Marcus felt a mixture of relief and sadness as he watched the situation unfold. He was relieved that Sergeant Murphy had arrived to restore order, but he was saddened by the reminder that even his position and reputation could not protect him from racial bias and discrimination. Sergeant Murphy's firm command hung in the air as Officer Mitchell stood frozen, still holding Marcus's driver's license and registration. The crowd of witnesses remained silent, sensing that this was a pivotal moment. News cameras continued, rolling, capturing every second of the tense standoff between the police officers. Derek, I'm not going to ask again, Murphy said, his voice carrying the weight of authority earned through 2 decades of police work. Return Judge Williams' documents and step away from the vehicle. Mitchell's hands trembled slightly as he looked at the documents, then at Marcus, then at the crowd of witnesses. His career was hanging in the balance, and everyone present could sense his internal struggle between pride and pragmatism. This is all being recorded, officer, Mrs. Washington called out from the crowd. The whole world is watching how you handle this. The elderly woman's words seemed to break through Mitchell's defiance. He slowly walked back to Marcus's car window and handed over the license and registration without making eye contact. Tardamam, crowd released a collective sigh of relief, though the tension remained palpable. Thank you, Officer Mitchell, Marcus said graciously, accepting his documents. Despite everything that had occurred, he maintained his dignity and professionalism. Sergeant Murphy approached Marcus's window. Judge Williams, I apologize on behalf of the department for this incident. You're free to go, and I assure you that this matter will be thoroughly investigated." Marcus nodded appreciatively. "Thank you, Sergeant. I understand that most officers serve with honor and integrity. I hope this incident can serve as a learning opportunity for everyone involved." As Marcus prepared to restart his car, the crowd began to applaud. The applause started slowly with Mrs. Washington and Reverend Patterson, then spread throughout the gathered witnesses. They were showing their support for how Marcus had handled an incredibly difficult situation with grace and composure. Lisa Martinez, the news reporter, positioned herself where she could address both the crowd and her television audience. "We've just witnessed Judge Marcus Williams being released after what appears to have been an unjustified traffic stop. The judge maintained his composure throughout this ordeal and has now been cleared to leave." Officer Mitchell stood apart from his colleagues, clearly understanding that his actions had serious consequences. His face showed a mixture of shame and anger as he realized the magnitude of his mistake. The videos circulating on social media would likely end his law enforcement career. Rodriguez approached Mitchell as the crowd began to disperse. "Derek, you need to go back to the station and write a full report about what happened here. I recommend you contact the union representative before you do anything else." "My career is over, isn't it?" Mitchell asked quietly, the fight having gone out of him. "That's not for me to decide," Rodriguez replied. "But I will say that what happened here tonight was completely avoidable. Racial profiling has no place in police work, and admitting to it in front of witnesses was incredibly foolish." Sergeant Murphy was already on his radio, reporting the incident to his superiors and requesting that the department's Internal Affairs Division be notified. He knew that the viral nature of the videos would make this case a high priority for the department and city officials. As Marcus drove away from the scene, he felt a complex mix of emotions. He was relieved that the encounter had ended without anyone being hurt. But he was troubled by the reminder of how racial bias continued to affect even successful African Americans like himself. His phone had been buzzing constantly with calls and text messages. Word of the incident had spread quickly through social media and news outlets. His wife Sarah had called several times, having seen the live stream coverage. His daughter Ashley had sent worried text messages after seeing the videos shared by her friends. Marcus decided to call Sarah while he continued his drive home. "Sarah, I'm okay," he said as soon as she answered. "I know you've probably seen the videos." "Marcus, thank God you're safe," Sarah replied, her voice filled with relief and concern. "Ashley and I have been watching the news coverage. We were so scared for you." "I'm fine, honey. It was a difficult situation, but it's over now. I should be home in about 15 minutes. The phone has been ringing nonstop. Reporters, colleagues, friends, everyone is concerned about you and outraged about what happened." Marcus wasn't surprised by the reaction. In the age of social media and instant communication, incidents like this could quickly become national news stories. He knew that by morning, the video footage would likely be seen by millions of people across the country. When Marcus arrived home, he found news vans parked outside his house. Reporters were stationed on the sidewalk, hoping to get an interview with him about the incident. Sarah and Ashley were waiting for him in the garage, having watched his arrival through the window. Ashley hugged her father tightly as soon as he entered the house. "Dad, I was so scared when I saw those videos. My friends were sharing them on all their social media accounts." "I'm okay, sweetheart," Marcus reassured his daughter. "It was a difficult situation, but I'm home safe now." Sarah embraced her husband, holding him for a long moment. "Marcus, this could have ended so much worse. What if that other officer hadn't arrived? What if the crowd hadn't been there?" Marcus had been thinking about the same questions. He realized that his position as a judge and the presence of witnesses had likely prevented the situation from escalating to violence. Many other African American men in similar circumstances might not have been so fortunate. The family spent the evening watching news coverage of the incident while fielding phone calls from concerned friends, family members, and colleagues. The story had indeed gone viral, with the hashtag Justice for Judge Williams trending on social media platforms. Legal experts were already appearing on news programs to discuss the implications of the incident. Civil rights leaders were calling for Officer Mitchell to be fired and prosecuted. Police reform advocates were using the incident as evidence of systemic problems within law enforcement. Marcus understood that his experience, while personally traumatic, had become part of a larger national conversation about race, policing, and justice in America. He had always tried to serve as a role model and advocate for fairness in the legal system. Now he found himself at the center of a debate about these critical issues. As the evening wore on, Marcus received calls from judges, attorneys, and politicians, expressing their support and outrage over the incident. The mayor's office contacted him to apologize and assure him that the matter would be investigated thoroughly. The police chief also called to personally apologize and promise accountability. Despite the support he was receiving, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that this incident represented a much larger problem that wouldn't be solved by one officer's dismissal or disciplinary action. 3 weeks had passed since the incident that had thrust Marcus Williams into the national spotlight. The viral videos had been viewed millions of times across social media platforms, sparking conversations about racial profiling and police accountability from coast to coast. Marcus had received thousands of messages of support from people around the world, but the attention had also brought unwanted scrutiny and criticism from some quarters. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Marcus's chambers as he prepared for another day on the bench. The courthouse had increased security due to the heightened public interest in his cases and the ongoing investigation into Officer Mitchell's conduct. Media requests for interviews continued to pour in, but Marcus had maintained his focus on his judicial duties. Patricia knocked and entered with the morning's case files and a stack of correspondence. "Judge Williams, the police chief, and mayor are here to see you. They don't have an appointment, but they said it was important." Marcus looked up from his legal documents. Over the past 3 weeks, he had met with numerous officials, civil rights leaders, and community representatives. Everyone seemed to want to discuss the incident and its broader implications for the city. "Send them in, Patricia." Police Chief Robert Harrison and Mayor Jennifer Thompson entered the chambers. Both looked serious and somewhat uncomfortable. Marcus had worked with both officials on various community initiatives over the years and respected their dedication to public service. "Judge Williams, thank you for seeing us," Mayor Thompson began. "We wanted to update you personally on the investigation and discuss some broader issues that have emerged from this incident." Chief Harrison stepped forward. "Judge, I want to start by apologizing again for Officer Mitchell's conduct. The investigation has concluded, and Mitchell has been terminated from the force. Additionally, we're recommending that the district attorney's office pursue criminal charges for civil rights violations." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "I appreciate your thoroughness, Chief Harrison. What about the broader implications? This incident wasn't just about one officer's poor judgment." "That's exactly why we're here," Mayor Thompson continued. "Your experience has highlighted systemic issues that we can no longer ignore. We want to implement comprehensive police reform measures, and we'd like your input and support." Chief Harrison opened a folder containing proposed policy changes. "We're instituting mandatory bias training for all officers, improving our hiring practices, and implementing a new community oversight board. We want to ensure that what happened to you never happens to anyone else in our city." Marcus listened carefully to their proposals. While he was encouraged by their commitment to change, he understood that real reform would require sustained effort and community involvement. "These are positive steps," he said, "but the community needs to see concrete actions, not just promises." The meeting continued for over an hour, with detailed discussions about policy changes, training programs, and accountability measures. Marcus agreed to serve on a newly formed police oversight committee, despite his busy judicial schedule. After the officials left, Marcus reflected on how much his life had changed since that evening 3 weeks ago. The incident had transformed him from a respected but relatively unknown judge into a national symbol of racial injustice and resilience. His phone buzzed with a text message from his daughter Ashley. She was at school but wanted to let him know that her classmates were planning a peaceful student demonstration supporting police reform. Marcus smiled, proud of his daughter's civic engagement and the positive way she was channeling her anger about the incident. Later that morning, Marcus, presided over a criminal case involving a young African-American man charged with drug possession. As he looked at the defendant, Marcus was reminded of his own youth and the different paths that circumstances and choices could create. He was more aware than ever of the weight of his decisions and their impact on people's lives. During the lunch recess, Marcus visited Mrs. Eleanor Washington, the elderly woman who had spoken up for him during the traffic stop. She lived in a senior care facility not far from the courthouse, and Marcus had been meaning to thank her personally for her courage. "Judge Williams," Mrs. Washington exclaimed as he entered her room. "I've been following all the news coverage. I'm so proud of how you've handled everything. Mrs. Washington, I wanted to thank you for speaking up that night. Your voice and the voices of all those witnesses made a crucial difference." The elderly woman smiled warmly. "Honey, I've been fighting against injustice my whole life. I lived through the civil rights movement, and I wasn't about to stay quiet when I saw wrong being done right in front of me." They talked for nearly an hour about the changes happening in the city and the ongoing struggle for equality. Mrs. Washington shared stories from her youth, reminding Marcus that progress often came slowly and required persistence from multiple generations. When Marcus returned to the courthouse, he found a surprise waiting in his chambers. Officer Sarah Rodriguez was there with Sergeant Murphy. They had come to apologize personally and to discuss their experiences working with Marcus to reform police practices. "Judge Williams," Rodriguez began, "I wanted you to know that many officers are embarrassed by what Mitchell did. Most of us joined the force to serve and protect all members of our community." Sergeant Murphy nodded in agreement. "We've been meeting with community leaders and implementing new protocols. Your incident has been a wake-up call for our entire department." Marcus appreciated their visit and their commitment to change. He realized that reform would require good officers like Rodriguez and Murphy to speak up and lead by example within their departments. That evening, Marcus received a call that surprised him. Officer Derek Mitchell was on the line, calling from his home. His voice was quiet and filled with regret. "Judge Williams, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I needed to call and apologize. What I did was wrong, and I've been thinking about it every day since it happened." Marcus listened as Mitchell continued. "I grew up in a household where prejudice was normal, and I never questioned those attitudes until I saw the video footage of our encounter. Watching myself act that way was horrifying. I'm attending counseling and trying to understand how I became that person." The conversation lasted 20 minutes. Marcus found himself feeling empathy for Mitchell, recognizing that racism was often learned behavior that could be unlearned with effort and education. While he couldn't excuse Mitchell's actions, he appreciated the former officer's genuine remorse and commitment to change. 6 months later, Marcus stood before a packed auditorium at the university, delivering a keynote speech about justice, accountability, and social change. The incident that had begun as a traumatic encounter had evolved into a catalyst for meaningful reform in his city and inspiration for similar efforts across the country. The police department had implemented comprehensive changes, including the new oversight board, enhanced training programs, and improved community relations initiatives. Crime rates remained stable while complaints against officers had decreased significantly. Ashley, now a senior in high school, introduced her father before his speech. She had become an activist in her own right, organizing student groups focused on social justice issues. Sarah continued her legal work while also serving on the police oversight committee alongside Marcus. As Marcus concluded his speech, he reflected on the unexpected journey that had brought him to this moment. What had started as a routine drive home from work had become a defining experience that highlighted both the persistence of racial bias and the power of community action to create positive change. The standing ovation from the diverse audience reminded Marcus that while the struggle for equality continued, progress was possible when people of goodwill worked together toward justice. The incident with Officer Mitchell had been painful and traumatic, but it had also demonstrated the strength that could emerge from adversity and the importance of never remaining silent in the face of injustice. Marcus looked out at the crowd of students, community leaders, and activists, feeling hopeful about the future and determined to continue using his position and experience to advance the cause of justice for all people.